All right, great. So we'll jump into our next slide, which is going to be our agenda for today. So we do want to take the first step in introducing you to Crowe. We'll go through who we are, what we do, and then following that, we'll jump into what are case interviews. Really, what is this thing that we're going to talk about today? We're trying to get a feel for if anybody on the call has completed any of these before, or if this is truly a new concept to people on the session here. Following that, we do have an interview, or a case interview example, which is actually an example that we posed to students who were being recruited. I believe it was a couple falls ago, so it is one of our older case interviews, but it kind of provides that context and an example to what these possibly could look like. Obviously, every company is going to do it different. Every company is going to have their different twists and turns, but we'll give you an idea of what ours look like and how we can kind of apply that and take that on. And that's where we lead into next, which is how to prepare, how to take that on, how to attack it, what are the steps to completing that case, and what is kind of the how does Crowe, and again, we're going to speak from our perspective, how does Crowe grade these? What are we looking for in these case submissions, and what constitutes kind of one of a good submission here, and what can be successful for you guys? And then finally, we're going to try to leave 10, 15, 20 minutes for questions, quick Q&A, just to wrap up for the day, and then we'll be on our way here. So with that, I'll jump into our introductions. This is the team we have here today from Crowe. My name is Evan Antishin. I am a MSU alum. I graduated back in 2019 from the supply chain management program. I quickly moved out to Chicago, Illinois after that, where I've been working with Crowe ever since. So I've been at Crowe with just over 2 years. My anniversary was actually at the beginning of the month. So I've been with Crowe for just over 2 years and have had a great time working with them and with people like Alec and Mariah as well. So I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. So my name is Alec Jamalvo. I started with Crowe actually at the beginning of this year. So I'm coming up on my 6-month anniversary pretty soon, which is exciting. But yeah, I went to Auburn University down in Alabama. Graduated from there with a supply chain management degree. And then I immediately went to the University of Tennessee and did an MBA with a concentration in supply chain. And then right after I wrapped that up in December, I started here. And yeah, I'm located in Nashville, Tennessee. It's gotten quite hot the last week or so. So that's something. But yeah, I work on the same project with Evan. So we work together pretty constantly. And that's it's kind of one of the nice things about being able to help him out with this.
All right, and I'll take over. My name is Mariah Thompson. I graduated back in December and I started in January. So I started recently as well. And I went to a small school in Missouri called Truman State University, where I got my degree in business management with a focus on statistical quality control. I report to the Chicago office. However, I'm currently working remotely and I'm in the process of deciding if I'm moving to Chicago or Dallas. We shall see on that one. Prior to Crowe, I was actually interning at a large aerospace company. And so that's kind of how I got involved with manufacturing distribution. And I went and decided to make the jump to consulting.
Great, awesome. And I think it's a good representation of the backgrounds of some of our employees here at Crowe. Kind of people who have been here longer time, shorter time. So I think we have a good representation to talk about these case interviews. And kind of how they work out. But before we jump directly into that, I do want to continue on with just a little bit of more into what Crowe does as a firm. So what Crowe is a public accounting, consulting, and technology firm. Crowe started off way back when as a accounting firm, and really from there has started to develop other services that we operate in. So what you're seeing here are some of the services that Crowe currently operates in, whether it's blockchain, data and technology, digital security, GRC tech, internal audit. Microsoft ERP is where myself, Alec, and Mariah all operate under. You could also have Microsoft CRM, Oracle NetSuite, and then also regulatory and compliance. So the one thing that I think really sticks with me when I think about Crowe is kind of the third part of that. We're a public accounting, consulting, and technology firm. So the technology part, I think Crowe is a technology firm at heart. We really strive on new technology, new develops in tech, and how we can apply that technology to our clients and provide a solution to our clients. And it's really kind of a fun, I almost describe it as in a way, kind of a startup feel. Especially in our group, it's a smaller group. When I say small, probably around 300 to 500 people, and that's in our Microsoft ERP group. And it's kind of a younger team base, and it's a lot of fun to work in. And what we really strive to do is identify new technologies that we can help provide solutions to our clients with, and that's a huge part of it. So within our services, we do operate in many different industries as well. Just a few off the top of my head are healthcare, banking, financial services, life science, and then finally manufacturing and distribution, which is manufacturing and distribution is the industry that Alec, myself, and Mariah all work in, and then with our group in Microsoft ERP. So I like to describe it as kind of using my degree in a different way. It's really, I have that supply chain background, but then also we work on the ERP implementation side. So it's, working with our clients to understand their manufacturing and distribution processes, all of those supply chain terminology that you guys can think of and that you're seeing in some of your engineering and supply chain classes. But then also applying it to the tech side and kind of having that tech savvy approach to how can we help build our client's solution with a technology focus, but then also focusing on their core operational strategies and manufacturing and distribution. So that's kind of insight to what we do as a firm, more specifically us, as in me and Alec. I'll speak for you as well because we're on the same project, but our client operates out of Toronto, Canada. And they are a steel service center, so very heavy in the manufacturing and distribution side of steel. And really, we work day in and day out to have a final solution, which is a Microsoft ERP system that we tend to implement towards the end of the project life cycle. And that's kind of what my day-to-day work is. And then also in addition to kind of the overall firm as a whole here. So at any time also in this presentation, if you guys have any questions that pop into your head, feel free to throw them into the chat box and we'll kind of monitor that as we go along. I don't know if there's any questions off the start here kind of as to what Crowe is or what we do. If there aren't, or if there are, I'll make any clarifications there, but if not, we can continue to move on here.
Just give them a quick 30 seconds, Evan, of what you guys do.
Great. Alrighty. Not seeing too many come in, which is no problem. If you want to hold them to the end, no problem. We'll have that time set aside for questions at the end. But really next, what I wanted to jump in before leaving this slide and jumping into the case technology is that just to emphasize that Crowe does heavily recruit at Michigan State University, whether it's out of the engineering program or supply chain management program as well. We will be on campus, or excuse me, not on campus, but at least doing some of these different recruiting events through what we're doing now, or whether it's the virtual case career fairs that are coming up. I am the campus rep for Michigan State, so I will be in attendance at a lot of those. If you ever want to connect with me, feel free to reach out. We do have a pretty active LinkedIn page and then also on Handshake for MSU, so feel free to take a look at us there at any job opportunities that we have posted, and never hesitate to reach out to us there. In addition to recruiting, and kind of our lead in to these case interviews, is I wanted to talk from a full-time recruiting perspective of kind of the process that Crowe will follow. So Crowe often will be in attendance at career fairs. I'm thinking from when I was originally recruited, I met Crowe at one of the business career fairs that was actually later in the year. And from there, that's where I had my first touch point with a recruiter. And from there, what usually Crowe will do is they will either have a kind of an on-site interview kind of the next day, depending on the interview schedule for the career fair. But then following that, Crowe will do a telephone call interview. And it's just kind of your basic telephone interview, trying to figure out what you're interested in and if you'd be a good fit at Crowe. From there, what Crowe will often do is then move you on to our Super Day interview, which is a day-long interview that they'll actually fly you guys out to Chicago. And you'll be able to view Crowe's office in downtown Chicago. And it's kind of a day-long event that gets you introduced to Crowe and also more of an interview process. So we have a formal kind of behavioral type interview that takes place. And then the second part of that Super Day interview is your technical case interview. So about 5 days before you take your trip out to Chicago, they will send you a case, which is then up to you to kind of solve. And when you come into the office for your interview, it'll be kind of a proposal interview that this based on this technical case, which is our lead into our next subject here, which is actually getting into what a technical case is and what it looks like from a Crowe perspective. So just a quick couple polling questions here, and we can use the chat box to kind of see your guys' answers. So feel free to type there. So first of all, just to get a feel, what year or standing are the students here that we're speaking to? Are we juniors, mostly juniors, freshmen, sophomores, seniors? See a few seniors, sophomores, juniors, senior. Great, so it looks like a pretty good distribution, maybe a little more predominantly seniors, which is great. I'm hopefully you guys are looking for jobs after college, and if it happens to be Crowe and you fall into the recruiting process with us, we look forward to it. Juniors as well. Follow-up question to that is, do any of you know what a technical case interview is? And this follow-up to that will be, have you ever completed one? Anybody out there? No? Appreciate the honesty. Great. Great. Well, hopefully this is kind of a new concept to you guys. And I know there are a lot of companies who are kind of going down this route of technical case interviews, as it's a great way to kind of see the analytical side of how the recruitee thinks and how they would mesh in with their company. I know when I went through my recruiting process, I went through a Crowe technical case interview, and then I had 2 others as well in my recruiting process with other companies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alec now to kind of jump into what exactly are these case interviews. And from there, we'll go on to how we solve them and kind of the process that Crowe takes behind them. So I'll turn it over to you, Alec, and we'll keep going.
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, so we're going to get into kind of the crux of what we're talking about here today is, what are these case interviews that we're talking about? How are they different from your standard behavioral interview that you guys are probably used to? And Evan, if you go to the next slide, you can see we've kind of attached a screenshot of a case that we've given in the past. So case interviews are designed to more specifically see how the applicant thinks, how you analyze, how you problem solve a fairly ambiguous kind of problem statement, because that is what we do. So the idea is to see how you address and how you react to a day-to-day problem that we could have at Crowe or just in the consulting field. So you can see kind of in that screenshot at the bottom that you're reviewing the information from a case that we're going to show in a second, and you're going to prepare a solution proposal with a kind of a cap. And the idea there is to see how you've thought about the problem, how you've analyzed it, and then how you can deliver that information in a concise format. Because you can have a lot of really good insight into it, but it's got to be actionable. So we want to see how you've addressed it in that sort of shorter format. And like Evan said earlier, feel free to pop any questions in the chat as I'm going through this. If you see anything that you'd like more information on, and I'll try and address them kind of as I'm speaking. So now that you kind of know what the idea behind a case interview is, how do you go about it? So Evan, next slide, please. And we can kind of take you through the journey of a case interview. So the first step is the prep. You're going to receive, new information you've never seen before, and you've got to, review that. Then you have to figure out what is the key point. So there's usually going to be, some syntax, and there's also going to be some extra information, some, stuff to build the situation around. But then what are the key points? What is the case really asking for? And what are you looking to solve? So you got to figure out, what really matters in the couple of paragraphs that you're given. And then when you figure out what it's really asking for, what's your recommendation? So you've gotten to the key point. What is your solution, as you see it? And then how do you back that up? Do you back it up with data in the case? Do you back it up with your own kind of anecdotal knowledge from your prior experiences? Do you back it up with, stuff you've learned in class? They're all valuable information to how you go about the problem. So that's what, we want to hear is how you address it. And then that last part, the evaluation, where we'll take what you've kind of given to us, the interviewer, and we'll ask you questions about your solution. We'll maybe ask for more information, ask why you did something one way, what you thought about, an extra piece of information if we have something to give. And so that's kind of the journey. Now, we saw kind of the header of the case interview a slide back, but now let's go to an actual example of a case that you might see in the interview. So Evan, you want to skip down 2 slides, I guess? So these are kind of the guidelines that you should be sort of going into the case with, and then as you're reading it, as you're preparing your solution, be thinking about these things. So you were there as a consultant. In the interview, we're the client. So, you're representing, Crowe as the consultant to the client. So structure your recommendations kind of in that format as someone who's delivering solutions to someone who needs to hear what you have to say and who's going to be really curious about what you're presenting. What impacts is that going to have on my business? So these are great solutions that you're offering me and great changes, but how's it going to impact the way my business operates? And then, know your audience, make sure that you're delivering exactly what that person needs to hear or wants to hear, what's critical to them. And then, like I said, kind of on that last slide, there's going to be some time for presentation from your end, and then there's going to be a bit of dialogue and kind of a Q&A back and forth, and we're going to kind of work on that solution. So on the next slide, we've got kind of the actual case that we're going to sort of talk about today. And I'm going to kind of take a break for a second and let you guys read through this. So I'll come back in about a minute. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to read through that. And I think the most kind of glaring thing about this is that it's a lot of information, right? So there's a lot of text here. They're outlining the situation as it stands, some things that the client might think are important for you to understand, and it's a lot of information. So kind of what do you do? And really you can distill this kind of entire situation down to sort of a single sentence. That's on the next slide, Evan. So after all of that text that you've seen, after you've looked at it, the real crux of the issue is that material handlers, forklift operators are either well above or well below capacity. So there's a ton of disparity in the work that they have to do to where it can't be leveled. So that's where you come in. So how would you help, Bartech, this company, solve this problem? And then coming back to kind of on that next slide, you can go back and you can see what critical information you might have. So we've highlighted, this section from that first paragraph. So all of it is important, but this is a little bit more actionable. It tells you exactly what the material handler is doing, what their kind of business process is like, what their day-to-day is like, because that's where the crux of the issue is. And then on the next slide, we've highlighted, or not next slide, but transition, yeah. And then this is sort of the second part of it. So from all that information that we've kind of seen from what you're given, you can go back and you can highlight what's actionable, what you can take and what you can work on. So kind of going from that, you can work on how are you going to take all this information and how are you going to structure it? So next slide, Evan. It's easy to, or maybe a good approach is to figure out from all that information, what are they actually asking? And then how are you going to address that? And that's sort of where you start your solution from, right? Because you got to figure out what they need to hear the answers for, and then what you think kind of that answer needs to be, and then go back it up. So go back it up with the data. So there is, a numerical kind of data in the 30-minute interval, and it's common to take up to an hour to unload one shipment. And like I said before, if you've worked in a warehouse before and you have experience with material handling, fork trucks, that kind of stuff, that's where you bring that in, because that is critical data to how you can solve this if you've solved this thing in the past. So you don't have to just use what's in the case. And then you've already identified, the root problem, that there's a capacity disparity. And then what's that recommendation? So you've got the data, you've got the root problem, you know how you want to solve it, frame that recommendation, and then present it back, to whoever you're presenting to. In this case, it's the Bartech CEO. So that's sort of the life cycle of the case, from being presented with a block of text to, okay, let's distill this into something that I can work with, let's work with it, and let's present it. And then after that, what is my recommendation section is when it sort of becomes a Q&A. So yeah, that's the life cycle of the case. And I'm going to pass this off now to Mariah to talk about, how to prepare it and how to present it.
All right. So I'll be covering on how to actually prepare for these case interviews. So if you want to move to the next slide. A lot of these may seem like common knowledge, but for some of our underclassmen, they might not be aware of how do you actually truly prepare for any sort of interview, let alone a case interview. So first, you really want to make sure you understand the question. What is the interviewer asking you to do? As Alec kind of hit on, sometimes there will be a bunch of information thrown at you, but not all of that information will pertain to what you are truly being asked. So are you looking to provide a recommendation? Are you providing an alternative solution? Or are you providing just an initial solution? And next, you want to make sure that you're actually prepared. So this includes practicing your presentation, figuring out any kind of technicalities that might come along with your presentation, such as transitions, what kind of presentation technique are you going to use, and also the ability to be able to communicate in a professional manner. And I will also add on professional dress. And so some of us might not necessarily be aware of how to dress for some of these presentations. The rule of thumb, especially for us as consultants, whenever we're on site, to always dress up rather than dress down. If you are not confident in what you think might be appropriate, always dress up, and no one's ever going to penalize you for dressing up. The third, you probably want to make sure you build a relationship with us. So while you're talking through your solution, it's always okay to maybe make a witty remark or something that might incite a chuckle or might relate to what we do on our daily jobs. Just that way you can build some sort of rapport with us as your interviewers, and that'll make us remember you and make you stand out. And fourth, you need to be able to listen to our feedback. whenever we provide feedback, we aren't attempting to tear down your argument or do anything to ruin your presentation, so to speak. We are actually trying to help you think about some other ways to approach things and really trying to help your presentation overall, so that way you can truly display the knowledge that you have about the subject. Next slide. And so now I have another polling question. Out of the 4 options that I provided, which ones do you think are the most important to prepare for? Keep in mind that this might vary from person to person, depending on your experience and just general struggles that you might have. So feel free in the chat box to just throw out a number 1 to 4 about which one you think you might have to spend more time working on, or things that you might have to think about a little bit more. Okay, I'm seeing a good mix of things. I'm seeing some 3s, some 4s, and some 1s. Not too many 2s, which I kind of figured that. 2s should be pretty universal overall for any sort of interview you're doing. Building rapport can be pretty hard because some people are almost afraid that they're going to skate that line and might come off as inappropriate. As long as you're not, making comments that are political or anything that might not be appropriate for the workplace, things that are witty or that relate to what we do on a daily basis should be okay there. Understand the question. Sometimes you need to block out all the other superfluous words that are in the prompt, and just to figure out, okay, what is it asking me? And sometimes it might not be as easy as look for a question mark. You might actually truly have to look through some of the and try to find and see what is it prompting you to answer. All right, I think I got some good answers there. So we want to keep moving along. And so next we're going to move on to what are we actually looking for in a case submission. And so we'll move to the next slide. So area 1, we're looking for organization and professionalism, which again, this should be kind of straightforward for a lot of you in regards to your papers or projects that you've done in the past at MSU. So we just kind of want to know, how are you going to tackle this case? We want a roadmap of where you're going to take us and where we're going to end up. The presentation style should be confident, authoritative, and credible. And we also want to be presented in a unique way. And so sometimes this might vary from person to person. There's really no wrong or right way to present. It ultimately, a lot of times, comes down to your professionalism and the way that you as a speaker present the information. In area 2, this is essentially, I kind of hit on that a little bit earlier. We really want to be able to see that you have the ability to take feedback, be able to defend your position, and also field any sort of questions. And so here, we aren't attempting to trip you up. We aren't attempting to disprove your position. We really truly just want to know, why do you believe that way? Can you support these facts? And possibly even help you and showcase your knowledge and your abilities. That way you'll be able to present yourself in the best light possible. Area 3, we will be looking for the justification and support a solution, which has kind of been mentioned a couple of times. We really want to make sure that that the evidence you have for your response is solid, and that you can truly back up any argument that you have. And that'll again come out in a little bit in area 2 as well. And in area 4, we'll be looking at recommendations and feedback. So we really want to see that you have critical thinking skills. You are able to think on your feet, so to speak. That's something that we do basically on a daily basis as consultants when we are in front of the clients. So we want to see that you have the ability to think on your feet, think about different approaches, think about different perspectives, be able to take any sort of feedback and any sort of questions and be able to turn them and help answer them in the best manner that you are able to. And so now I have a few examples of some different presentations that we've had in the past, and we're just going to take a quick look at all 4 of them, and we'll get some feedback on which ones you believe move forward and which ones you think were the best. So we have example 1. We have a nice flow chart with lots of colors, lots of arrows, neatly labeled. I think we can go and move on. And again, we have another chart showing where things trickle down to. We have arrows pointing to different things. We can see where things branch off and how things might vary. And we can move to example 3, which is a 2-parter. Oh, sorry, that's the next one. But example 2, so we just have a simple PowerPoint slide deck where we just have bullet points and we have words that kind of spell out the thought process. And we'll move to example 3 now. Now this is a two-parter. So we have this one. So this is figure 1, and it shows how something might go down a certain route here. And if we move to the next example or the next slide, we will see that this is another way that how the process might go as well. And so we have one more, actually. We have 5, I believe, examples. And then finally, we have a very, very colorful, with lots of graphics. We have this example. You can see the different breakdowns and arrows, very stylized arrows, along with lots of text. And so now with those 5 examples, I believe, are there any in particular that you think were stronger than others? And which ones do you think moved forward in the recruiting process? You can just go ahead and throw down a number in the chat box, and we can periodically go through all 5 of them.
So I will click back through these for the group here. But, and if there's any specific that you guys like me to specifically show you guys, just let me know. We can take a few more minutes to take a look at those different diagrams or solutions that were provided for these cases.
And feel free just to drop a number in the chat box, 1 through 5, which example you think moved forward.
A lot of 1s.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing a lot of 1s.
I think everyone thinks 1. Is anyone brave enough to come off mute and say why they think 1 is the best, since it seems to be unanimous?
All right, I think I'll keep moving along then. Does anyone want to be brave and take a shot? There's no right or wrong answer here.
Yeah, I mean, everyone already agrees with you, it looks like, so.
All right. Well, actually, all 5 of these examples did move forward. And so that just kind of goes to show that there's not really one correct way on how to go about presenting a case interview. And so with the one that has, heavy text, bullet points, like a traditional PowerPoint slide, I'm sure that they probably had a great delivery when it came to the actual speaker on how they present the material. So again, just because you have an amazing visual PowerPoint doesn't necessarily mean that that's automatic you win. We need an individual that has great presentation skills and is able to speak. Gotcha, 1 was easier for me to read. Okay, I can understand that. And so just make sure that both the presentation and also the speaking skills are united, and they both will definitely help contribute to your success in the case interview and moving forward. I think that's it for me.
Perfect, thanks, Mariah. And I'll just add in a couple more tidbits in my opinion on these cases here. One of the common themes that I see is a present process and then a proposed process. I think that's a great way to take a stab at some of these technical cases that are given to you. It shows kind of your analytical thought process, is that you're identifying the problem or the current method that's causing the issue or the issue statement that was presented earlier. And then you're looking at it from a proposal perspective and how it can be adapted, changed, and what that will look like in the future, and any impacts, benefits, or possible, issues or risks that could come out of that as well. It's all part of what we do as consultants almost every day. Is, we're presented with an issue. We need to analyze the current process, what that future process could look like, and then lay out the risks, benefits, or really any information possible, so that the client can then make that final decision on how to move forward. So really what we're trying to do in these case questions or technical case interviews is see your analytical thought process and how you would present it back to us in kind of that day-to-day scenario that I just went over. So I personally think these can be kind of taken as kind of a fun way to kind of get to know what your day-to-day job would be at that company you're possibly interviewing with. What I noticed from when I did my case interview with Crowe was that it was almost identical, looking back at it 2 years down the line now, to what my day-to-day would look like. It asked us to take a look at a warehousing issue that had technology involved with an ERP implementation. I know this one was a little bit different, but really that's what we're trying to see from our candidates is, can you think analytically in the kind of same state or situation or scenario that we're in day to day, is really what these case interviews are looking to do. And if you kind of own that and put together good information based on what Mariah and Alec just shared, that's what gets you moved on to that next level of interviews or into that full-time internship position. And I do just want to take a quick look at the clock here, and we're getting pretty close to our 15 minutes that we wanted to leave for Q&A. And I think we are pretty much right on time with that, as we have our Q&A slide here. So maybe one of the few times that we've actually been able to stay on track. So thanks, Alec and Mariah, for keeping to it. But at this time, we'd like just to invite any questions that you guys have, whether you want to throw them into the chat. Feel free to come off mute and just ask us any questions, whether it's about these case technical interviews, about Crowe, about recruiting, anything. We're here just to end this session with any questions that you have.